This is delivering on our election commitments. This is the single biggest investment in social and affordable housing by a federal government in more than a decade. This fund will sit there and the returns from the fund will be invested in perpetuity into more social and affordable housing right across Australia. We'll also be introducing legislation to get independent advice on what will work to get more homes on the ground more quickly right across Australia with our Affordability and Supply Council. And we'll also be introducing legislation to create an entity called Housing Australia that will be responsible for working with states and territories, community housing providers, superannuation industry and others to deliver those homes and get them onto the ground.
Yeah, this has just been such an ongoing problem. You talk about getting advice about, to get things happening more quickly. The Property Council came out with a report this week saying taxes on construction costs, government taxes, surcharges, levies, that's all making it lethal to affordability to actually have new properties built in Australia.
Yes, and I was at that launch yesterday and they're welcoming our Supply and Affordability Council and the fact that we will be getting independent advice on what will work and what won't. This advice will be what levers are available to what tier of government and how they're best implemented to make sure that we don't create distortions elsewhere in the market. What we need to do is have everybody working together, all tiers of government, the construction sector, the community housing providers, states and territories, to make sure that we're all heading in the same direction, because we all realise we have a fundamental issue in Australia with housing affordability and we all need to be working together to solve it.
Last night on 7:30 we saw more images and heard from people, vulnerable people, who are living in tents, who don't know where their next home is going to be, who face homelessness. How long is Australia going to be a country where that happens to people?
Yeah, and those stories are really tough, and I completely understand how difficult it is for so many Australians who are doing it really tough. And that's why we've immediately unlocked up to $575 million to get more homes on the ground more quickly. We've already made some announcements about where that money will go, and construction is getting underway to make sure that we have more affordable properties on the ground for people to be able to rent as quickly as we can. It's why we've also brought forward some of our other election commitments, like our regional first home buyer guarantee, which has seen 1,700 people in regional Australia get into their first home sooner. That helps people who are currently renting or people who are looking for a home to help get over that hurdle of a deposit, so that people can get into their first home with as little as 5% deposit. So we are looking at our policies right across the housing spectrum, and we need to make sure that they're based on evidence and advice.
Minister, how worried is the government that we are going to see multiple numbers of people defaulting on their loans this year? And does the government actually have an idea of how many might fall into that category?
Look, we're obviously really concerned about the increasing interest rates and inflation, which is why we're acting to reduce inflation as much as we can, to put downward pressure as much as we can with other cost of living support for Australians, like we did in the last budget, with cheaper medicines, cheaper childcare,
do you have any figures, sorry, Minister, but do you have any figures, just specifically to that question, do you have any figures or any idea how many people might end up defaulting on their loans?
Well, we're obviously keeping a close eye on it. We're talking to some of the bigger lenders about the number of people on fixed mortgages, but I understand that the financial institutions are making contact with those people. We know that far too many Australians are finding it difficult and they're facing some very tough decisions, which is why we're trying to support them in every way we can.
Do you feel confident with the decisions being made by the RBA at the moment?
Well, they're obviously independent of government. What we're trying to do is add to housing supply to try and deal with some of the housing affordability issue, and we're acting, as I said, through the last budget and the next budget to try and provide cost of living relief in a way that's not adding to inflation.
Yeah, no, I understand they're independent of government, but do you have confidence in the decisions that are being made?
Well, they've always been independent of government and they make decisions based on the advice available to them. What we're concerned about is assisting those Australians who are doing it tough in every way that we can, and we're doing that today with our $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund. I mean, we're talking about the biggest single investment in more than a decade from a federal government in social and affordable housing to try and improve supply of housing right across the country.